Warning. If you are a religious fanatic, a believer and devout follower of any religion, this video is not for you. The content that will be shown here could change your way of thinking. So you've been warned. Let's continue. Is there a hidden gospel of Jesus' childhood? Although if you're a follower of this channel, you probably already knew that. But what I'm about to reveal definitely doesn't come from the Bible, but from a text that the church has excluded from the holy book and whose content is shocking. I am the Documentalist, and this is the abominable gospel of Jesus. In 1945, a pair of Egyptian brothers in Nag Hammadi, an area of the Lower Nile, discovered an initial set of Gnostic Gospels about Jesus. Researchers discovered a set of codices comprising the largest identified collection of extra-biblical Christian documents. That is, texts written by ancient Christians which the church had never discovered and, therefore, were never included in the Bible. There were over 50 texts, most of which were Gnostic Gospels, extracted from the original Bible that remained hidden since the beginnings of the church. Long before the religious conflicts between Catholics and Protestants, the early church was divided over the basic principles and beliefs of Christianity. Factions with different beliefs fought and had differences over the nature of God, His relationship with humanity, and how people should worship Him. Of all the branches, the Gnostics were considered one of the greatest dangers to Orthodox Christianity. Many Gnostic documents were lost during the power struggles between different theologies. Since then, the Bible has changed, including the way Jesus is represented. Thus, Gnostic beliefs remained a mystery. But the collection in Nag Hammadi revealed new information about early Christianity. One of the most striking texts is called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which contains a record of Jesus' childhood. This gospel portrayed the young prophet as someone unknown, even to the most devout Christians. The text reads as follows. Jesus punishes people without reason and shows no respect for their parents. I must emphasize that the Infancy Gospel of Jesus is not a part of the modern Bible. But it's a fascinating glimpse into what some of the earliest Christians knew about Jesus' childhood. Jesus curses a child. According to the Gospel, at 5 years old, Jesus gathers water from a stream into small ponds and performs a miracle. He forms clay sparrows that come to life and fly. However, a child angers Jesus by using a willow branch to break the water puddles that Jesus had created. And he said, "O wicked, impious, and foolish, what harm have the ponds and waters done to you? Behold, now you will also wither like a tree, and you will not give leaves, nor roots, nor fruits." Jesus cursed the boy, who subsequently withered until he met his end. Jesus kills a child and blinds his parents as well. After cursing a child to wither, Jesus walks through the village until a child hits him on the shoulder. The young Messiah responds by cursing the child. "You will not finish your course." And the child fell to the ground lifeless. The parents of the deceased child go to Jesus' father, Joseph, and complain that their son has killed 2 children in the village in a single day. Then Joseph tries to discipline Jesus. Joseph called the child and admonished him, saying, "Why do you do such things? Do they hate us and persecute us?" But Jesus said, "I know your words are not your own, but for you I keep quiet. But they will bear their punishment." Then Jesus blinded the child's parents. After Jesus' performance, Joseph took Jesus by the ear and twisted it painfully. But his attempt at discipline fails to deter the young Jesus. "You are content with searching and not with finding. And have you really done something reckless? Don't you know that I am yours? Don't bother me." Throughout the infancy Gospels of Jesus, he opposes various teachers and authority figures. He constantly contradicts and embarrasses his teachers, causing Joseph to later say, "Who is capable of restraining this child and teaching him? Do not consider him as a little brother of the cross." The infancy gospel follows a specific formula that readers of the time may have considered typical. There is a series of 3 miracles followed by a lesson. The miracles are generally presented as allegorical structures. But in the lessons, the author verbalizes his points through the word of Jesus. The first teacher is Zacchaeus. Joseph specifically asks Zacchaeus to teach Jesus to learn to love those of his age, honor old age, and venerate the elderly. Zacchaeus does the best he can, trying to teach Jesus the alphabet, starting with the Greek alpha. Then he launches a speech questioning his teacher's knowledge about what he is supposed to show the young man, and tells him no. Knowing the alpha, according to its nature, how can you teach another the hypocritical beta? And the teacher Zacchaeus responded to Jesus, "Woe is me, wretched that I am confused. I have shamed myself by drawing this young child. Take him away, I beg you, brother Jose. I can't bear the severity of his gaze. I am about to faint and die for the child, because I am not able to look him in the face." At this moment, Jesus disappears for 3 days, and his parents go into panic. As Jesus grows in the gospel of his childhood, he doesn't act as often. His later miracles involve the resurrection of people, including a sick child and a builder, but he remains antagonistic to his parents. When Jesus is 12 years old, his parents leave him at home and go to Jerusalem for the Passover feast, as was the custom at that time. Upon returning home, they find that Jesus has disappeared. For 3 days they search for him and finally see him giving a lecture to a group of elders in the Jerusalem temple. When his mother confronts him saying they were very worried, Jesus responds, "Why are you looking for me? Don't you know that I must be in my Father's house?" Jesus? He reverses all the damage he did to prove his power. Jesus' first 3 miracles involve killing 2 children, blinding 2 adults, and humiliating an older man. Jose continually laments that his son's actions have caused the entire town to despise them. However, After ridiculing teacher Zacchaeus, Jesus abruptly reverses all the damage he has done. And while the Jewish people were advising Zacchaeus, the young boy laughed a lot and said, "Let the barren bear fruit, and let the blind of heart see. I have come from above to curse them and call them to the things above, as ordered by the one who sent me for you." And when did the child stop talking? Immediately, all those who were under his curse were healed, and no one after that provoked him so as not to be cursed and become mutilated. The Gospel shows the innate divinity of Jesus. According to Bert Herman, a scholar specialized in the study of the New Testament, narrators of this era did not share stories to show a character facing challenges and growing as a person, but the stories focused on characters whose traits were persistent over time. If a person was born with certain traits, these remained as part of them throughout their life. For early Christians, there was virtually no difference between Jesus as a baby and as an adult. Therefore, the author may not have intended for these stories to demonstrate how Jesus was once impetuous but later became a wise leader. Rather, Jesus appears to be a man who was given divine understanding from his birth. The Roman masculinity of Jesus. Why is there a contradictory story of Jesus being a disobedient child and then becoming the savior of the world? Perhaps the author of the text strove to model what the Romans would have considered masculine virtues. Roman masculinity largely revolved around the concept of the word virtus. The word virtus had many meanings that changed throughout the life of the empire. At the time the Gospel was written, virtus was increasingly applied specifically to military achievements. Roman masculinity meant the domination of enemies and the ability to demand total obedience from women, children, and foreigners. Some scholars ask contemporary readers to consider the Gospel of Infancy in this context. The concept of virtues may influence Jesus' disobedience and disrespect towards his father. To become the ultimate man of Roman society, a little man who is not under anyone's authority, Jesus cannot obey his father or his teachers because he knows he is above all other men. Some believe it was a work of satire. Although the Gospel is an apocryphal text, scholars have tried many approaches to reconcile the Jesus of the Bible with that of the Infancy Gospel. These approaches position the text as influenced by the Old Testament of Greco-Roman nature, or simply a particular splinter of Gnosticism. This sounds very consistent, as the Old Testament always shows us moments when God behaves violently towards humanity. Similarly, the author of these texts could have been influenced by the Old Testament and its way of telling things. Theologian James Waddell believes that a non-Christian wrote the Gospel as a satirical attack. He points out that the writer of the Infancy Gospel of Jesus seems to know or care little about Jewish traditions at the time of Jesus' life. This would likely indicate a Greek author or a Jewish writer who had not yet converted or been influenced by Christianity. Many of Jesus' acts are mentioned in the Quran. Jesus is a great prophet in the Quran, appearing around 35 times. Several of these appearances echo stories of Jesus that are derived not only from the Bible, but from Gnostic texts, also including, of course, the Gospels of Jesus' childhood. The story of Jesus giving life to clay birds, for example, echoes in the Quran, in the passage that says, "I have come to you with a sign from your Lord. I make for you out of clay the figure of a bird. Then I breathe into it, and it becomes a bird by God's permission." Why does a strange reference to Jesus appear in the Quran, which corresponds to an appearance of the same in the Gospel of Infancy? Could it be that the story is true? The Gospel might have been banned. The Gnostics often refer to a group of mystics who believed that physical matter was bad and therefore the Spirit of Christ would not have its own physical. In reality, the movement was a large and diverse collection of philosophical and cosmological views. While their rejection of matter was a basic principle, many other schismatic beliefs led them to theological conflicts with Orthodox Christianity. The early church fathers constantly opposed the Gnostics and other heretics, refuting them in letters and sermons. The power and influence of the Gnostics fell abruptly after Constantine's conversion. Christian bishops found power within the Roman Empire and they used that power to have their way, like banning certain sects of Christianity and the books that held all their beliefs. So among the banned literature could have been the Infancy Gospel of Thomas. There are also other texts that describe Jesus' childhood. Although all the canonical Gospels include stories of Jesus' childhood and youth, none are considered a pure infancy gospel. However, in the Gnostic texts, Thomas is not the only writer who dedicates an entire gospel exclusively to Jesus' youth. The Nag Hammadi library includes the Infancy Gospel of James, which deals with the same period of Jesus' life. Although the Gospels of Thomas and James are the most read, they are far from being the only infancy Gospels. Outside of the Nag Hammadi library, there is the Syriac Infancy Gospel, the story of Joseph the carpenter, and the life of John the Baptist. When Christianity unified with the Roman Empire, the early members of the church consumed any literature related to Jesus, hungry for new texts about their Lord. Like most of the New Testament, these texts were written at least 100 years after the death of Jesus. Many of them were taken from the canonical Gospels. Thomas, in particular, seems to be filling a specific gap in Luke. At that time, people would not have understood this as plagiarism or usurpation, but rather as a late contribution. Only over many centuries of debate and confusion, the New Testament became the text we know today. A modified Bible, a book missing texts, a compilation convenient for a few. The Holy Scriptures are not complete. But little by little, new discoveries are being made in different parts of the world. To tell us about those gaps, those missing parts that will gradually lead us to know the true Word of God more completely. I am the Documentalist, and this was the abominable gospel of Jesus. My book, The Paradigm of Terror, is now for sale on Amazon.com. True horror stories, real cases that will leave you wondering if that other world really exists, the world of spirits, ghosts, and demons. The Paradigm of Terror will make your nights never the same again. With it, your imagination will travel through new and unexplored territories full of mystery, terror, and intrigue. The Paradigm of Terror are experiences and cases that came to me from those who were surprised by terror when they least expected it. I am the Documentalist and this is the Badamacum of Terror.